Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. The James Hutton Institute will lead a new project to help boost the impact of the Future of UK Treescapes programme. Through the project, the Tree of Knowledge, the Hutton will help to communicate the complexity of forest resilience. Plant ecologist Dr Ruth Mitchell is leading the project. I asked her to tell me more.
The Tree of Knowledge project is bringing together 3 different projects that have been funded by a programme of research called Treescapes. And those 3 projects are all looking at how to increase the resilience of our woodlands. But we want to bring them together to provide consistent advice for woodland managers.
And are these all projects in Scotland, or are they projects across the UK?
They're projects across the whole of the UK.
Fantastic. Now, you talk about visible and invisible diversity. What do you mean?
Well, there's different types of diversity. So when we're thinking about tree diversity, the sort of obvious diversity that people might be able to see is differences in tree species. So you'll see different tree species, they've got different leaves. It's quite obvious to look at. But there's also differences within a species in terms of their genetics. So within a species, some individuals might be better able to cope with slightly drier climates or slightly warmer climates. They might be slightly more resistant to particular pests or pathogens. So you've got that level of diversity that's not very obvious. I can't actually see what the genetics of a tree is very easily, nor can anybody else. And then we've also got something called epigenetics, which is very much a new area of research, and that's kind of looking at the memory of the tree. So we're still not quite sure how that works, and that's work being done by Birmingham University. But as a tree undergoes various stresses in its life, there are potentially chemical changes in it that helps it kind of remember those stresses and respond to them better perhaps in the future.
So this is a sort of generational memory that you're talking about, is that right?
Yes, I mean, it might be able to be transmitted into its progeny, but we don't know that yet. That's very much something that colleagues at Birmingham University are looking at. So yeah, so there's 3 different types of diversity that the Tree of Knowledge project will be looking at. So there's a project called Diversity Tree, which the Hutton is leading, that I'm leading, and that's looking at tree species diversity and how that can help increase resilience. There's a project led by Stephen Cavers at UKCEH that's looking at genetic diversity. And there's a project led by Estella at Birmingham University that's looking at epigenetics. And the Tree of Knowledge project wants to bring those 3 levels of diversity together.
And when you're talking about, diversity within the woodlands, the work that you're doing, you're not just talking, I take it, about, how many oaks or beech or birch or whatever happen to be in a particular forest, but different species of oak and how they support each other as well?
Yes, I mean, the sort of wider implication of that is that if you maintain your forest landscape, then you're also supporting a whole range of other biodiversity. So the reason we're interested in diversity is the sort of theory goes that if you've got a more diverse woodland, if some individuals or some species succumb to climate change or a particular pest or pathogen, there'll be other individuals or other species around that would hopefully continue to support all that wider biodiversity that all our woodlands support.
Do you expect that your work will contribute to broader knowledge around forest diversity, including insects and fungi and other forest life?
I'm certainly contributing to that through the Diversity Tree project. So we're putting together information about all the wonderful biodiversity that's found in our Scots pine forests, and also looking at what biodiversity might be found in our Sitka spruce forests. We've already done that for our oak trees and our ash trees. So, for example, our oak trees in the UK support 2,300 species, and that was information that we pulled together. Our ash trees support over 900 species. So we're also looking at that, sort of the biodiversity supported. And it's really important sorry.
No, I was going to say, you talked about Sitka spruce forests there, and those are one of the forests where you have nothing but Sitka spruce within that plantation, where there is an assumption that actually there's quite a heavy impact on biodiversity. Is that the case?
I think that's something that this project's hoping to disentangle a bit, and I think it's not just a question of the tree species, but it's also the growth form. because we tend to plant our sitkas in very dense forests for, obviously for a very particular purpose, and we need the timber that they provide. But that perhaps isn't the best growth form for allowing much biodiversity to survive in some cases. So I think you need to be aware of thinking about not just the tree species in the forest, but also the structure of that forest and how diverse that structure is.
And new rules, of course, are helping to ensure greater diversity within forests than there used to be.
It's certainly something that the new UKFS standards, so that's the forestry standards, that if you're wanting to apply for grant schemes, they are encouraging people to plant more diverse forests. And I think it's now 65% is the maximum that of any one species that you can plant in a new grant funded scheme. I think that guidance came out last week or the week before. Yeah.
I wonder how a better understanding of diversity can help with increasing forest resilience, perhaps, for example, in the face of disease.
We're very much trying to work with practitioners. So we really want this research to be very applied. So part of the new project will hopefully really interact with practitioners, so that we can actually help influence what happens on the ground.
Now, under biodiversity net gain rules, woodland and other habitat that gets removed to make way for development is re-established elsewhere. I wonder how long it will take for genuine diversity and resilience to establish itself in these locations.
I think that is how long's a piece of string. I mean, our ancient woodlands have obviously been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and some of that is almost irreplaceable, certainly in a human's lifespan. So yeah, it is how long is a piece of string, and it depends what biodiversity you're wanting to establish. And we can never say that anything's completely resilient. We can just hopefully increase the resilience of our habitats.
Clearly, you mentioned ancient forests there, and those will take a very, very long time to re-establish. But can you see a situation where more straightforward habitat is easier to reproduce in a different location and faster, therefore, to create that new resilience?
I mean, some newly established woodland, it depends, I think, what habitat the newly established woodland is replacing. So if the newly established woodland is replacing a habitat that's quite poor in biodiversity, then that could have biodiversity benefits quite quickly. If the newly established woodland is replacing a habitat that is already quite rich in biodiversity, you might lose some biodiversity, but replace it with different biodiversity.
And when you say quite quickly, is that a matter of years or a matter of decades?
Again, it does depend what you're measuring. I mean, if you're planting things on a sort of arable field, you might gain benefits quite quickly in terms of some of the bird species moving in, some of the ground flora species moving in, but you wouldn't get your typical woodland species until decades later.
That was Dr. Ruth Mitchell from the James Hutton Institute. More about this and our other headline news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.